Hey guys, welcome to my final verdict on this manual BMW M4 G82 generation, the very latest car. I've had this particular car in Germany for the past 2 weeks and covered almost 2,000 kilometers in it. In fact, by the time I give it back in about 4 days' time, it would have done about 2,500 Ks. In that time, well, I've had plenty of high-speed fun on the Autobahn. And I managed to do 3 laps around the Nürburgring itself, the Nordschleife. I could have done more, but I didn't want to take liberties with this car because it's not mine. And although it's insured, if you do stack it at the Nürburgring, you'll be up for repair damage on the barriers, recovery damage, etc. It's a nightmare. So I had 3 laps of absolute fun in this car, slowly built up the pace a little bit, but was really happy with my last lap. Had a lot of fun out there following George, the mechanic from Apex. Before we get into the nitty-gritty about why I really love this car so much and why I think the manual box really suits it, I'm going to talk about the couple of negatives that I've come across in the 2 weeks that I've been driving this car. As I talk about so much on my channel, no matter how good a car is, there's always negatives. And the first one is directly connected to the manual gearbox, and it's an issue that I have in my manual M2 competition, and in fact it's an issue that I had on my manual LCI M135i back in 2015, 2016, and that is when you go into 6th gear, so top gear, it's just not long enough. So when you're doing 130, 140 k's an hour, so let's say 80 miles an hour, which is an average speed out here on the motorway, and it's about the speed that most people sit at in the UK on the motorway, it's revving at just over 3,000 RPM. So it's never really settled, and it's drinking a lot of fuel at those revs. This engine's actually quite efficient if you're sitting at 2000 RPM like I am now, but once you get to 3, it's just consuming so much fuel. And I know this is a 80,000-90,000 pound car, but still, if you could be doing 35 to 40 miles to the gallon like I can be in my M3 with a ZF 8-speed auto, compared to, let's say, 25 to 28 miles to the gallon, it does make a big difference on longer journeys. It means you spend less time at fuel stops, and obviously it means that it saves you a few quid along the way. Now let's get on to the good bits. As most of you know, I've got plenty of experience in the new M3 and M4 over in the UK. In fact, I worked out on this trip that I've covered about 20,000 miles, 30,000 kilometers in the new G80 and G82. My own ones covered about 9,000 miles of that, so I know this car very well. But up until 2 weeks ago, well, I hadn't tried the manual option. So if you'd seen my first drive video, you know that I was massively excited and very eager to see what this car's all about, and if it does indeed inject some of that enjoyment and involvement back into this car. Well, let me tell you in short, yes it does. I've had so much fun in this car in the time that I've had it. Okay, maybe not on the first couple of days, because I couldn't get my head around the fact that I was changing gear with my right hand instead of my left hand. It's just brilliant. It really, really is. I feel so connected to this car. There's just something about a manual box, and I know it's slower from A to B in most cases on the road or on the track, but let's face it, it's not about speed on the road especially. It's about how you feel behind the wheel of the car, and that's what M cars are all about. They're there to give you that driver involvement and engagement. And I love my M3, but I've been very open and vocal about the fact that it does lack a little bit of driver involvement unless you're absolutely pushing it to your own limit and the car's limit on a track. That's when it comes alive. Whereas this car, well, you can just have so much more fun at, let's say, more legal speed limits and on the public road, and just makes this car, yeah, just a better package for me anyway. It really is a mega piece of kit. Really is. You've got that incredible front end that the new M3 and M4 have got. You've got that amazing traction behind, but you've also got a really good manual gearbox. As I talked about in my first drive video, this car retains the mighty S58 3-litre straight 6 twin turbo unit, but it is down a few horses, about 35 horsepower, and more importantly it's down a whopping 100 newton meters of torque. Now initially I did notice and feel that difference, but I've learned to sort of drive around it, and if you want the maximum performance from this engine, you've really got to rev it out and use all those revs. And once again, that makes it more of a driver's car in my opinion. But BMW have done something very clever with the torque curve. To me, it feels like the initial torque, let's say between 1500 and 2,500 RPM, well, it seems to pick up better from there than the auto equivalent. And that's something I've complained about in my M3. Out of slower corners, if you're caught napping and in the wrong gear, it really struggles. And if you had that mapping in this car with 2 less cogs, then you would get stuck even more often. So it's really important that they've changed that curve, and they definitely have. You put your foot down in second out of here, and it just goes. And I'm never sitting here wishing that I had the full fat version of the S58, because this car is definitely fast enough, especially for the public road. I could once again sit here and wax lyrical about these fantastic carbon bucket seats. You know how much I love mine. They're just brilliant. I've spent a lot of time in this car. They're so comfortable, they're so supportive when you're out on track or on the Nürburgring. I can't believe I took this out on the Nürburgring. That's just so epic. They're just brilliant all-rounders. Yes, they're a bit of a pain to get in and out of. They're not ideal, but they do everything else so well. These ones are heated as well, which is going to be a bonus when it comes into the winter months. Something else that this car's got that I haven't ever tried on any UK spec car are the carbon ceramic brakes. Now, aesthetically, well, they look bling. Let's use that word, bling. They really do. They look gorgeous and they work really well. They are a bit less consistent than the steel ones though. And again, if you've watched some of my videos on my M3, etc., the brakes are epic straight out of the box, and I believe that BMW M have put softer brake pads in them to make them a bit better. Obviously, you've got massive 6-pot calipers on the steel brakes, so you've got plenty of stopping power. And as I've discovered, the standard brake pads don't last very long. My rears lasted about 5,000 miles, but you do get epic stopping power in return. These ones, they don't feel any more impressive on the road. They have been less consistent, as we just talked about, on wet days as well. They're just a bit, not hit and miss, they're always there, but I just don't think they do as good and consistent job as the steel brakes, ironically. But I'm sure if I took this car out on track, like Goodwood or something, and did 5 or 6 hard laps, maybe the carbon ceramic brake option would come into their own then. But even my steel ones haven't had too many issues with overheating, etc. So yeah, if you're trying to save some money, unless you're doing regular track work, I would go with the steels. And even then, if you are doing regular track work, if you wear the pads and the discs out on these carbon ceramics, which will last you longer, but when they do wear out, I dread to think how much they would cost to replace. So for me, steels, unless I was given a set of carbon ceramics. But that's not saying that these are bad, they're just no better in my opinion. This road is just... I should have brought a fuel tanker with me so I could just continue to go up and down it all day long. It's just so much fun. Oh, wow. To conclude, and a question that I've been asked lots about on this trip, would I buy a manual option if they are offered in the UK? If you'd asked me that on day 1 or day 2, I would probably have said no. But after 2 weeks in this car, I'm going to miss it. And I tell you what, if I could have my M3 with a manual box, that would be the dream, the absolute dream. It really would. And it would mean that I could sell my M2 competition. And I know that nobody wants me to sell that, but I'm not made of money. And in an ideal world, I'd have one car that does everything. And I think a manual version of my M3 would just be epic. In fact, a manual version of my M3 in a touring would be the absolute dream. Guys, thanks so much for watching, and thanks for the support as always. Without you, I wouldn't be out here chasing awesome content, getting my hands on cars like these. I mean, it's just been a brilliant couple of weeks out in Germany. A massive thanks goes to the BMW M boys and girls for throwing me the keys to this car for 2.5 weeks. It's just been awesome. Really enjoyed it, and it's made me realise how much we do miss the manual version of this car in the UK. But what we got to keep our fingers crossed for is that the new M2 that's coming in 2022, well, let's just hope that that comes with a manual option in the UK, because from my understanding, it's going to be very similar to this M4, slightly shorter, slightly more compact, maybe a slight bit less power and torque, but just as fun as the previous one. I really hope that they offer that manual option. I know that the majority of people buy autos, but people like me, well, I'm a die-hard manual fanboy, and I would really miss this if we couldn't get it. It's just so good. Wow. Love it. Guys, until next time, take it easy, and I'll see you soon. Cheers.